Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Hello, this is Pat O'Toole. Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast. It's just over 1 year since the British electorate voted for Brexit and are leaving the EU. Since then, there has been much fluctuation, discussion and debate over the topic. Patrick Donoghue speaks with Farmers Journal editor Justin McCarthy, market specialist Phelim O'Neill and agribusiness editor Owen Lowry over the impact of Brexit in the last 12 months.
All, you're welcome. Phelim, to you first. It is 12 months now since the UK electorate decided to leave the EU. What has happened? A very broad and open topic, but what has happened from an Irish agriculture, political, that type of a point of view?
Ironically, in terms of what has actually happened, nothing of negative consequences so far for the Irish industry, or indeed the Northern Ireland or indeed Scottish industries. Commodity prices have all increased, very much currency driven of course, but market opportunities in Europe and indeed in the wider world have been such that there has been really good demand across beef, across dairy and indeed pig meat. So in terms of consequences of the Brexit vote, so far absolutely nothing. But of course the reality, we have to recognise that it is only just exactly 1 year after the vote took place that the process of negotiation of the exit begins, and it's that carries the whole fear for the Irish agricultural industry and indeed the industry in Scotland and Northern Ireland as well.
Is that something of a basket case that nothing has happened? Because there was such clamour and, a cacophony of chaos that happened in the immediate aftermath.
Well, of course, the reason for that, quite simply, is that no one in the UK really expected that the vote would go the way that it did. Even the exit polls right up at 10 o'clock on that Thursday night were indicating a narrow win for the Remain side. And in fact, the leader of the Leave campaign, Nigel Farage, would have been conceding defeat at that point. So it caught everyone by surprise. The UK in many ways has been scrambling since to establish a position. It was only at the end of the March that they give their formal notification, at which point the clock starts to tick. So at the end of March 2019, the UK will no longer be a member of the EU unless, of course, the negotiations that have now begun result in that period being extended. And for that to happen, the remaining 27 members of the EU have to all agree to it. It has to be a unanimous decision. So,
and finally with you, Phelim, talks commence this week. Have to have pretty much all negotiations done by the October 2018. Talk us through just a couple of points between now and then.
That's correct, and I suppose that we've got the first indication this week as to who holds the aces in the negotiations, and certainly the initial impressions very much suggest that the EU side, with Michel Barnier leading on behalf of the Commission, have had their terms of reference, if you like, accepted for the negotiating format. It's going to be on the terms of the UK leaving. That is the priority before they get into substantive talks about a future trade deal and arrangement. Quite how that can happen in the time that's available, no one understands that there's any appreciation of negotiation of free trade deals. For example, the Canadian one, which is considered one of the more benign ones, took 7 years to negotiate, and hasn't yet been finally ratified by all of the member states. Trade discussions with Mercosur have been going on since 1999. So in terms of unravelling the trade deals that the UK have been part of since they joined and putting new ones in place, it is just inconceivable that it can happen in the time frame that's available. And probably from our point of view, if you ask me, what is ideal from Ireland's perspective, from Northern Ireland's perspective, from Scotland's perspective, what is ideal is that discussion continues for as long as possible, to a point where perhaps someone in the future will say, actually, where we have been wasn't so bad.
Owen, there nearly hasn't been a week gone by that you haven't written about some form of Brexit or impact or one other in the agribusiness pages of the Farmers Journal. The immediate impact was currency related. Is that still the big issue on exporters and the agri-food companies that you're dealing with every week?
Yeah, I suppose that was the initial shock, overnight shock, where these the exporters to the UK market witnessed a 10% hit in the value of sterling versus the euro. I suppose that had the effect of knocking off, for the second half of the year, about 500 million euros worth of exports to the UK market. It was unexpected, the vote at this time last year, the outcome of it, and the sterling took that hit. where we are today, I suppose, yes, the currency has fluctuated over the past 12 months, reaching highs of 90 pence down to, where it is trading at the moment. What it could mean is that we're at a new level for the price, the exchange rate between sterling and euro. However, I suppose the companies can they can hedge and prepare better for that. The biggest impact of this is really about food prices in the UK going to go up, and we are seeing that at the moment. We are seeing the food prices. We are seeing food inflation in UK supermarkets, and that is directly related because the UK market imports 40% of the food they eat.
And because we export such a volume of food to the UK, have the meat companies, dairy companies, are they in a better position of there's the initial shock and as you say, of currency, but are they now kind of dealing with that uncertainty and dealing with that volatility? It's now just part of the everyday basis.
It's very high on their agenda. They see anything outside of the current arrangement that we have and the trading arrangement that we have with the UK as a risk to the business. They have formed groups and they are looking at this. What they would like is for to defend the UK market, but also diversify into new markets. Now that's very, very much easy said.
It doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight. No, exactly.
So, and same with you, Owen, that's what agribusiness or companies are doing. What can farmers and food producers, how are agribusiness companies working with the people who ultimately supply them with the produce that they sell on the side?
I think there's an onus on the industry to look for new markets for products, and again, we've seen this week, trade missions such as the one this week to the US. They're absolutely critical at a time like this. Maybe it replaces the emphasis that we have placed, but it has been a very, very strong market for us, be it in dairy markets and in beef markets and meat markets. So it's going to be very hard for the whole industry to turn its back on the UK market. Like if you just take dairy, for example, it could have the effect of adding, if WTO rules come in place, it could add 3 cents to the cost of a litre of milk processing here, which is puts us on a very uncompetitive platform. And Justin, over to you.
Owen is saying that we can't turn our back on the UK. Minister for Agriculture Michael Creed is saying that we can't turn our back on the UK. Phelim is saying that nothing might happen for 20 years, 10 years. You're picking up the vibes and what's happening, and you're following closely what's happening in London and Brussels. Where is the political landscape in all this?
I think exactly what Phelim has said, that this isn't... We can fool ourselves and say that this is going to be a 16-month negotiation process. I think this is a 16-month process in which to reach an agreement, and I don't think that agreement will be around Britain leaving the single market or indeed falling out of the customs union, and I think that's becoming increasingly more widely accepted than maybe it was certainly before the election, where we were talking about cliff edges and deal or no deal we were going. As Colin McCarthy quite rightly says in his article in the paper this week, Britain can remain within the single market and indeed the customs union, but leave Europe. Now, okay, that'll be a tough sell for the British politicians to go back.
Is that what the UK voted for?
Look, what did the UK vote for? I think they're only realising at this time what they voted for. John Bruton, in a piece in this week's Farmers Journal again, highlights that maybe now the people of Britain will only actually get a sense of what they have voted for and indeed what they stand to lose. And this is an interesting negotiation process, because at the end of the day, no party will ever be able to claim success, because both parties will be worse off if this actually follows through the way we think it's going. I would concur with some of what Phelim said there in relation to the mood within the corridors of Westminster now. It's certainly a lot different than it was when Theresa May delivered her Global Britain speech back in January.
And just couch that, since the UK election a couple of weeks ago, a likely connection and partnership with the DUP. What has that meant? Because the language from Arlene Foster is, it's not hard Brexit, it's not soft Brexit, it's a practical Brexit.
Patrick, Arlene Foster is no fool. She's a very smart lady, former Minister for Trade and Enterprise in Northern Ireland, so she gets it. She knows what the impact of Brexit on Northern Ireland could have. I suppose for me it was well summed up in a recent radio interview that the DUP like the symbolism of Brexit but don't like the substance, and I think that was a very good way of doing it. I think certainly the move by Leo Varadkar to extend an early invitation to the DUP down to Dublin was a very smart move. The DUP will have power in this. They get the problems that a Brexit will face for north-south, east-west trade, and I think whilst they may be and obviously advocated a Brexit, they will be sensible in terms of the approach that's actually needed. I would say that sense has not only been not only evident in Northern Ireland politics, but as I say in Westminster. And I would certainly think that the comments this morning, on Tuesday morning, by Philip Hammond, the Chancellor in the UK, where he is now talking about the benefits of migrant labour to UK businesses. He's talking about the need for a long transitional period where the UK would remain in the customs union for a long period. They're all positives. And interestingly, John Bruton is advocating that Ireland now puts a lot of effort into actually convincing the UK to remain within the European Union.
Phil O'Neill?
Just picking up on that point, interestingly, in the previous Parliament there was quite a strong mood that was for giving effect to the referendum. And remember, always the referendum in the UK is only advisory. It's ultimately Parliament that has the sovereignty. Now, it's widely known the Conservative Party is seriously split on Europe. It has been for this past 25 years. It is not beyond possibility that there will be an element of the Conservative Party that would be pro-Europe, or at least neutral towards Europe, and the Labour Party, that they could actually reverse the Brexit decision entirely, because ultimately they have the authority to do so. There would be hell to pay, if you like, at a populist press level. There would be a huge issue with those that are strong advocates for Brexit. But in terms of the UK, it is a very evenly divided, like 52 to 48. It was a very close vote, with no one having any understanding of what the implications would be. Now, you could say that the vote in the recent election was very much the people, if you like, taking back control, to use one of the populist phrases, by returning a hung parliament, and it gives an incredible amount of power to, if you like, the view that had lost the referendum.
But Phelim, just to tease that out a little bit, would you not have expected to see the Liberal Democrats make more progress? Now, I know their election campaign was far from perfect, or far from well thought out, but if that was the case, some people on the other side would be seeing that the Lib Dems vote should have been much stronger.
If it was purely a Brexit issue, absolutely yes. But the reality is that election was about so much more than that. It became, at the end of the day, a tug-of-war between the personalities of the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn and the Prime Minister Theresa May, who was believed and regarded by everyone as having a very bad election, very wooden performances any time that she was exposed to the media. Whereas Corbyn, who was not considered a serious politician prior to the campaign, by his personal touch, he almost achieved a reverse of what Donald Trump achieved in the US. The unelectable almost became electable. So UK politics is in a very fluid state, but the reality of life is that the balance of power in the Houses of Parliament, if it had been left to a free vote in it, we never would have had a vote to leave the EU.
Very good. And I suppose maybe one question for each of you finally, a one-word answer. Brexit, hard, soft, or none at all? Phelim?
It will be deferred.
That's more than one word. Owen?
Well, at the moment it looks very much like it's going to happen, but we're hopeful that it wouldn't, I suppose.
I think a lot of what is now acceptable to discuss wasn't acceptable before the election. I think the election has thrown a whole new freedom to people to think of anything as possible. I think this is going to be a long process. Will it happen? I think it'll happen in a forum, but it won't be to nowhere near the extent that Theresa May outlined in January.
I think all three of you would work very well as politicians, giving long one-word answers. Thank you very much. We have extensive and exclusive coverage in this week's Irish Farmers Journal of Brexit 1 year on. We have former An Taoiseach John Bruton, the director of IBEC, Danny McCoy, as well as we're speaking to exporters and farmers affected by it. So thank you very much, and you can read more about it in this week's Irish Farmers Journal.
Hello, this is Thomas Hubert, news correspondent with the Irish Farmers Journal. Just 1 year ago, the UK voted to leave the EU. The enormity of the challenge this posed to Irish agriculture emerged through the voices heard on the Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Let's listen back. On the 23rd of June, as British voters were going to the polls, Minister for Agriculture Michael Creed issued the first warning.
We have done modelling on, the impact it would have, obviously, in the agriculture and marine sector, particularly in the fisheries side, and we have fed that analysis into the whole of government approach, which has been coordinated by the Department of Taoiseach. But we see no upside in this for the Irish economy, and certainly no upside for the agri-food sector.
24 hours later, Brexit was a reality. The Newry show was taking place that weekend in County Armagh. Amy McShane asked local farmers for their reactions.
I think everybody was taken back yesterday at the outcome. Nobody's seen that actually coming. We are where we are. We have to look on the positive side of things. Never mind all this negativity. We've got to embrace it in the local governments now indoors, and I've got to embrace what we can export and what deals can be done for the beef industry. Can new markets be seen, which there is clearly out there, and goodness knows in every dark cloud there's a silver lining, so maybe they will be able to do a lot more exporting out of the north here. So it's up to the local politicians now to get the best deals.
Can I ask you how you voted?
To get out.
You voted to leave?
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to mean now for the North and UK? You obviously think it's going to be a good thing.
Well, I think there's a lot of bureaucracy in Europe. I think as well as that, perhaps it'll maybe do away with some of that bureaucracy. A lot of things seem to be European controlled. We would be better controlling it ourselves.
Yes.
Nobody knows what's going to happen, or is single farm payment still going to be there? What's the UK going to do? They don't even know themselves, that's the problem.
What about the Republic's farming industry? The scale of the Brexit challenge became obvious at the first briefing organised within days of the vote by Bord Bia. There, the Irish Farmers Journal's agribusiness editor, Owen Lowry, spoke with Bord Bia's Director of Markets, Pádraig Brennan.
It's the number one export market that we have, taking about 41% of our food and drink exports every year. Last year the trade was worth €4.4 billion. And you look across all the sectors that we have for beef, it takes over half for beef, 30% of our dairy, over 85% of all our mushrooms go to the UK. So virtually in every category that we have, the UK is the single biggest market for us.
And what would be the categories that would be the most affected? So beef is a very large market, about 50% of our beef. And the dairy side, in the dairy aisle, what products are going to be likely most affected?
On the dairy side, really, I suppose, is cheese. About 65% of all the cheddar cheese that we produce every year goes to the UK. So straight away, that's an obvious category that will come under pressure as well.
And looking outside the UK, Bord Bia has been very active in growing and opening up new markets. I suppose, what has the performance over the last year been like in some of those markets, or how have they grown?
You say markets outside of Europe generally have shown very strong growth over the last number of years. They've increased, so in the last 6 years, they've increased by more than 40%. So what we've seen there is markets in Asia, particularly China and Southeast Asia, North America, Middle East and Africa have shown very strong double-digit growth over the last number of years. So we are seeing more markets emerging and becoming larger over a period of time. But I suppose the thing about the UK market is obviously we have a history there with very strong trading relationships there, and I think if you look at the results of the survey that we did with companies in the immediate aftermath of the Leave vote, there's still that strong desire among Irish food and drink companies to maintain their presence in the UK as much as they possibly can.
Larry Murrin, the chief executive of the meat processor Doan Farm Foods, gave his own reaction.
We have faced many collective challenges in the sector over the last 30 years, but certainly none like this, with the degree of uncertainty that this has attaching to it. Any Irish company who, just give you one example in the very, very short term, and it's just one of several challenges we have to face, and this is as true for inside the farm gate as it is outside the farm gate, and this industry touches the fabric of life in every parish in Ireland, and there's more than 200,000 direct jobs involved inside and outside the farm gate. So if you take the exchange rate alone, as of this morning there was a 16% differential between the sterling-euro exchange rate as to what existed as a mean average in 2014-2015. Do we think we're going to just be able to knock on our UK customers' doors and recover that 16% tomorrow? Somehow or another, I don't think it's going to be as simple as that.
Currency was also a worry for Arthur O'Neill, a machinery dealer based a few steps north of the border in Crossmaglen. News correspondent Odile Evans visited him on the day of the referendum's results.
Arthur, you're a tractor dealer here, literally on the border, aren't you? And you said you went to bed last night thinking that...
But that we'd be waking up this morning that we'd be still in the EU.
And that didn't happen?
And that didn't happen. I was very shocked.
Yeah.
We do not want to go back to the old days when we'd have to load up, go into Newry, go from Newry into the customs, and then into Carrigan, up in Carrigan and Dundalk, and for to deliver something to a customer down south, it would take a whole day in clearance alone. The currency is the problem. We were always buying our goods with the sterling cheaper from Southern Ireland. And now they reckon that the euro's going to be stronger than the sterling.
Well, the sterling is doing this all morning.
I know it is, and last night it was real good closing. And the next thing was the other way. So I think it's going to create very big problems.
Is it having an immediate impact on your business here, buying stuff, or you just stop buying today?
Well, everyone's wondering which way we are. We're wondering about what we have already bought and sold in Northern Ireland. Would we get enough euro or enough sterling to cover our euro to pay our suppliers down south?
And we met Arthur again 1 year after the referendum. Read more from him in our Brexit coverage this week. So where does all this leave Irish farmers? The IFA's chief economist, Rowena Dwyer, detailed the immediate consequences and the long-term challenges with Amy Fitzgibbon.
The really important thing that our government and other institutions do is get some certainty on the table pretty soon to stabilise the currencies.
And how do they do that?
I think they do it by coming out and accepting that this decision has been taken now and that there is no point in maybe lamenting it. The point to do now is to look forward and say what will be the best outcome for the EU and for the UK in developing their new relationship. I would expect that exports to the UK will actually continue to grow. It is still a growing market. The issue is they will not grow potentially at the same rate that they would have done without barriers. So what kind of a best case scenario is there? I suppose market access that minimises any barriers to trade as far as possible. What do I mean by that? It would most certainly not be in any Irish exporters' interest for there to be tariffs applied on Irish exports or on UK imports coming into Ireland. What I suppose the big concern is that we're one of now what will be 27 member states, and there will have to be a balance found between agreeing a new trading relationship with the UK that is positive and also recognising the fact that they have voted to leave and therefore they cannot enjoy the exact same membership benefits that we all have. That is going to be a significant challenge. There is one other area that is hugely important to Irish farmers and the agri-food sector. It is the implications for the EU budget. The UK is currently a net contributor. As I said, they're going to remain part of the EU, so for 2 years, whatever their contribution is and the rules that are set out will remain.
It was something like 8 billion.
That's correct. They're net contributors of approximately 8 billion. It fluctuates slightly every year, but you're absolutely right, which means they make a net contribution to the Common Agricultural Policy. The issue is we have had a CAP reform that was quite difficult to negotiate, and farmers have certainty at the moment as to their payments between now and 2020. I think we will be saying very clearly to the Irish government that as part of the overall EU negotiations, that there has to be certainty around the EU budget up until 2020 in the negotiations.
1 year on, with formal discussions only starting this past Monday, the questions are as burning as ever.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
We discussed the future for beef farmers over the next 6 months with the IFA's Director of Livestock, Kevin Kinsella.
Anthony Jordan here from the Irish Farmers Journal. I'm here with Kevin Kinsella, Director of Livestock in the IFA. I suppose, Kevin, you're very welcome to start.
Thank you, Anthony.
I suppose, look, a year on from Brexit, I suppose, what are you seeing on the ground in terms of what are the IFA seeing among farmers towards the issue of Brexit?
Well, I think Brexit originally started off in a very confused position and lots of uncertainty about the place. I think that's much clearer now. I think there's a better understanding among farmers on the ground. I think that has emerged as a result of a very strong, clear paper the IFA put forward. We had our major conference in Goffs, and I think we've succeeded in putting farming and the agri-food sector top of the government's Brexit agenda, and we want to keep it up there now. We have a lot of talk about issues other than the trade issue. We believe the trade issue is the key issue, and of course that means access to the UK market, and our other key priority is the CAP budget, maintaining the level of funding for the CAP budget. They're the two key IFA priorities, and I think they're beginning to emerge and more clarity among farmers on the ground on those two key issues.
And just in terms of, I suppose, specifically for the beef market. What does Brexit mean for beef, especially in the next 6 months?
Well, I think in the next 6 months, the key issues from a Brexit position on beef is going to be the exchange rate with sterling, how that's going to change or impact on cattle prices going forward. And the second issue is going to be our access to the UK market. On the latter, I think it's very positive. I think the UK market will remain strong over the next 6 months. We'll have fully fledged free access in there. That won't be an issue. So that's positive. On the exchange rate, it's very hard and difficult, if not impossible, to predict. But I suppose what we've learned over the previous 6 months, there's going to be some level of fluctuations there. And that'll see a higher degree of fluctuation in price back to the farmer if there's fluctuations in the sterling exchange rate. But I do believe very strongly that the return from the UK market will remain very positive.
Kevin Kinsella, thank you very much.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Moving on from Brexit then, news correspondent Barry Cassidy was at Teagasc's Sheep Open Day in Athenry this week. He spoke to sheep enterprise leader Michael Diskin about the difference between the top third and the bottom third sheep farmers in Ireland.
Barry Cassidy here from the Irish Farmers Journal. I'm here with Michael Diskin, sheep enterprise leader in Teagasc Athenry. Michael, can you tell me what's happening here today?
This is our Sheep Open Day here. We hold those events every 2 years or so. And I suppose the focus today really is on, trying to bring the Irish sheep farmers and the Irish sheep industry up to date with the most up-to-date information that's coming from our own research programme here.
You mentioned earlier about the gap between the top third and the bottom third of Irish farms. Tell me just what exactly is that gap?
Well, if we look at the bottom one third, they're probably generating a gross margin of about €269 per hectare based on the 2016 National Farm Survey results, while the top flocks, the top one third of flocks, are generating a gross margin of about 1,329. Now, okay, they are not net margin, they're gross margin, but I suppose the important thing is that unless you have a reasonably respectable gross margin, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a net margin. So if there's a fivefold difference between the top one third and the bottom one third, and if we look behind those figures then, what contributes to that? And we see ourselves that, that the biggest factor affecting that gross margin are two main factors. One is extra lambs produced per ewe, higher prolificacy, and the second thing is that they have a slightly higher stocking rate. The cumulative effect of the higher stocking rate and of the higher prolificacy is that the top one third of flocks are selling 16 lambs, while the bottom one third of flocks are selling 8 lambs. If we go behind those figures even further, we see that the direct costs, these are the meal, fertiliser, veterinary and those costs that are directly involved in producing the lamb, that we would expect them, at least hypothetically, to be higher in the higher performing flocks because they are producing 16 lambs. But the very interesting figure is that there is very little difference in the cost of producing that lamb between the two flocks. And the reason I would ascertain for that difference is that those lower performing flocks are producing a lot less lamb, off grazed grass, and they're much more dependent on high cost concentrate feed to produce that lamb.
So if you had to give one or two key pieces of advice for farmers in order to bridge that gap, what would that be?
I think the first thing I would say is concentrate on producing a prolific replacement female, a ewe that is capable of producing 1.7, 1.8 lambs. And you're talking really about a Clare or a Blue Leicester cross or a Clint cross ewe. Cross that ewe then with a terminal sire such as a Suffolk, Texel or Charolais, one of those breeds. The second thing I would say then is look at your grassland management. Do you know how much grass you're producing? Put in a paddock system so that you have some control over the grazing, so that lambs will have access to fresh grass every three to four days. You don't need a very elaborate system, but you probably need a system that allows probably 5 or 6 paddocks per system. Then start thinking about making sure that the ground is properly fertilised, properly limed, and that has the capacity of producing that grass. And Once you start producing extra grass, that will then immediately allow you to improve your stocking rate. But you can't talk about improving your stocking rate until such time that you start producing more grass.
Michael, thanks very much for that.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Meanwhile, our beef specialist Ciarán Lenihan went down to Clare to meet better beef farmer Sean Hayes, who has a penchant for breeding quality stock.
We're here with the new Clare representative in the Better Farm Beef Programme, Sean Hayes. Sean is he's a suckler farmer, split spring and autumn calving, so he's 40 cows calving in spring this year and then 20 in the autumn. He's traditionally been a live seller, but he's taken his first steps into the world of finishing cattle. So John, you might talk us through that this year. Why are we doing that?
Yeah, so Sean basically he runs a split calving, 20 in the autumn, 40 in the spring. Normally he's selling live as weanlings and forward stores, so I suppose it doesn't make sense if he's putting all this work and effort into breeding top class stock, and he has scope there to finish stock in terms that he has a small bit of housing on the farm, so we're looking at finishing 10 bulls there this Christmas in December.
So they'll be autumn born, they'll be going into the shed as the yearlings off grass, then getting out under 16 months.
Yeah, look, we were happy enough in terms that we weighed them there. They were born last July and August. Turnout weight was in around 400, tops being 420, 430. So I suppose their first birthdays won't be for another 2 to 3 months yet, so we hope that there'll be 550, 600 kilos going to the shed in maybe the 1st September, and hope to get them out the gap by December.
Sean, you've some fantastic shapy calves. We're just after walking through the suckler herd there. What sort of sires are you using? You're using a lot of AI here, around half AI, is it?
Yeah, around half AI, yeah. So GPD was the Charlie bull I used a good bit. Then we used the likes of Imperial and Germinal with the Belgian Blues, and then with limousines, mostly Zeg, a bit of ADX there in some of the shapier limousine calves we saw.
Okay, you're at 60, Sean. What in your head is your ideal, I suppose, number of suckler cows, and what other ways could you see boosting output on the farm? You know, bought in stock, you do buy in some stock. Any chance of getting a few dairy calves in as well?
Maybe, yeah, it might be something we look at down the road. I suppose for the cow numbers, I suppose I'd like to go up 10 more autumn cows, 10 more spring cows.
In terms of managing that, like, what's your calving spread at the moment in the spring?
In the spring, I suppose goes from kind of roughly the 1st of January to kind of end of April.
Right.
That's something we're going to put a big emphasis on at the moment.
What are you targeting there?
I want to bring it back to 8 to 10 weeks
short
at the
and
most.
Sharp, yeah.
Definitely.
Suppose if you're going finishing, it's important to have a nice uniform bunch.
Exactly, and plus from I know it's going to be a big workload for that 8 or 10 weeks, but it's a job when you're calving cows. It's a job you should be doing nothing else, only calving cows. So.
And what do you rather, Sean, calving in the spring or the autumn?
I suppose the autumn is less of a workload. Calving outside, generally you'll be hoping good weather. Calves are always a lot healthier going into the shed and stronger against the shed. There's no scours, no pneumonia. So then spring calves, I suppose, if you've good housing, good healthy calves, there isn't a whole lot of workload extra with them either. Like, so look at maybe autumn, I'd be a small bit more autumn pushed, but maybe spring is maybe profit-wise maybe a little bit better off.
Get more grass into them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Thanks, lads, that's perfect.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
And in this week's Irish Country Living podcast, news correspondent Odile Evans meets with the IFA County Wicklow Farm Family Committee, who run the Food from Our Farms marquee at the Tinnahealy Show.
So this is Odile Evans here, news correspondent with the Irish Farmers Journal. I'm here with Florence Stagg, and today we're launching the Wicklow Farm Families tent at the Tinnahealy Show. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going to be in the tent this year?
Well, there's almost everything. If you haven't had your breakfast before you come, you can definitely go around the tent and get it. Likewise, your lunch and your evening meal. So if you're hungry for anything, or if you want to bring home your evening meal, it's all available in the marquee.
And are all of the is all of the produce from Wicklow?
Not all of it, but about 60% or 70% is from Wicklow, and we're lucky this year we have a few new people from Wicklow who have never exhibited before.
Okay, and who have you got this year?
Well, we have a new person producing relishes and has never been exhibiting before. It's a new product. We also have a new person with fruit and vegetables. That is a new person. We have a baking person who is new. and we have a person with herbs who we haven't had herbs for a while in the tent. So they're all new this year.
Okay. And I remember in previous years going through, we had like Wicklow Farmhouse cheese, we had the Chocolate Garden of Ireland. There's some well-known national brands there as well, aren't there?
That is true, yes. We still have those products. We have another cheese also, as well as the one you've just spoken about. So we have that cheese, and we have jams, relishes, biscuits, you name it. We have it. We also have our local butcher, and has one of the 2 only abattoirs in Wicklow, and he produces all local. He buys all local animals and slaughters them on his own premises, and on display each week is the name of the person on whose farm they grew up.
Okay, perfect. I'll go to Chris then. Chris, you're the Wicklow IFA chairman. How important is this for Wicklow IFA in general?
I think, Odile, it's a very useful flagship for Wicklow IFA and the farming community. This marquee has been organised by the ladies of the IFA farm family for many, many years, more than we all care to remember, and a few more along with that, I think. It's probably in about its 30th year, I'd say, at this stage, or over 30 years now. So it's a well-established part of the Tinahely show, and the show committee have always been hugely supportive to the concept of local producers coming in with their products into the tent and getting a start and a market opportunity to promote themselves and their wares. In the current food environment, there's a huge swing towards food air miles and all those kind of things around provenance, and it's good to see this happen at a very local level here in County Wicklow. And IFA have always been very supportive of this, and I think it's a very positive thing that has lasted for so many years. It's down to the committee who have done it all those years, and a lot of them are there for nearly since the beginning, but tremendous commitment by all those people all through the years.
And if previous years are anything to go by, it's probably one of the more popular tents at the Tinahely show, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, on a wet day it's very, very popular, but, but even on the fine days, I mean, there's usually ice creams to be had and things like that. I mean, I don't know whether the ice cream comes from Wicklow Milk or not, but it comes from somewhere anyway, and there's usually good demand for those things too. So, and
is this the only county in the IFA to be doing it, or are there other counties doing similar things?
Other counties do different things. Like Wexford County Executive run a food fair in Enniscorthy every year, and I think the other counties that do similar kind of things, not necessarily at county shows, maybe a standalone or in relation to other local festivals and things. But it's all part of kind of the bottoms-up approach to promotion of Irish product among Irish consumers.
Perfect. So the Tinahely show is on the August Bank Holiday Monday 2017.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.